Hi, so in this third part on maximising damage in Hellfire Citadel for Retribution Paladins, we're going to look at Council, Killrogg, and the Guildbreaker, Gorefiend, or Guildbreaker number 1 at any rate. So we'll start off with Council. So to begin with, you'll be on Blood Boil, and who will be tanked on top of Blade Master. So you want to do a bit of damage onto Blade Master at the same time. So you'll want to be in Seal of Righteousness regardless. If you're in Final Verdict, then you can weave between Final Verdict and Divine Storm. If you're in Seraphim, you just have to follow a single target rotation. Now, when Blood Boil gets down to is 30%, you've got a choice to make. And this, if you're progressing on the boss or you've only recently killed it, this will very much depend on how easily you can burst down Blood Boil once he's got to 30%. If every nanosecond counts, then maybe just before you pop your Avenging Wrath and everything like that, you switch to Seal of Truth. But I would say in most cases, you don't lose very much by staying in Righteousness. You might as well stay in it. If you get Fell Rage, of course, at this point, I never do. I've got no footage of that. Sorry about that. Obviously, what you do is you pop a load of cooldowns as well. You have the benefit as a Paladin with the 2 and 4 set of using wings at the pull. If you get a Fell Rage, you can use wings on that, and you can still use your wings when Killrogg Blood Boil gets down to 30%. If you don't get Fell Rage, you've got another wings to use when another one gets down there. Obviously, Reap is something when you get that, you're going to be moving away from the boss. So again, think about movement speed. If the position for you dropping Reap is not too far away from the boss, which ideally it won't be, I'd really recommend Long Arm of the Lord, because you can judge, move away with a bit of a speed boost, and use it to judge and move back again after the Reap has gone off to minimise the amount of time you are out there. Beyond that, I might advise Glyph of Double Jeopardy. You're not going to get a great deal of benefit from Mass Exorcism while those two bosses were around, and at this point, you're never going to have any two things stacked together, and so you might as well use Glyph of Double Jeopardy for when the Blade Master ads come up and as you're sort of moving between them. Again, Long Arm of the Lord is useful there because you can move more quickly between them as your judgment comes up as well. Other than that, it's the usual thing of making sure that you have got... Oh, that's bad news. The ring's popped as I get Reap, which means I'm not getting much benefit from that one. But that's the sort of thing that can happen. But when ring is up, as much as possible, use your Avenging Wrath. But little things in this fight will cock that up. I mean, it's the same as in a lot of fights. If you get Reap at that time and it means you have to move away, that's just bad luck. Someone will have to anyway. But yeah, that's really all there is to it. It's a bad boss for us. It's not a good boss for us, especially when we're progressing. We're not the best DPS class for it. You can make yourself most useful, as I say, by making sure you've got wings available for when you're bursting down the bosses from 30% to dead. But beyond that, we're not actually of all that much use. Other than the fact, as I say, if you do get Fell Rage, then you've got the cooldowns available to be able to make full use of that, whilst at the same time still maintaining cooldowns to be used when those bosses get down to 30% and you use the ring or heroism or anything like that. Okay, so with Killrogg, you've got to make a decision. Are you going to use the class Trinket? It's a single target fight. Class Trinket and Seraphim work reasonably well on this boss. It might depend a little bit as to whether you're going to be going to the visions. Generally speaking, Retribution Paladins are not invited to go down there. Boo hiss. But that makes it a lot easier from my point of view, because you can use the class Trinket. You can maintain the stacks of that. Yes, you're not going to be coming top DPS because you won't have the damage buff from that. Other things can affect, does your guild soak these puddles like this? Ours do, so again that's taking you out and can risk... Oh, just caught it. Can risk you losing your stacks on your trinkets. You need to watch out for that if you're going to use it. If you are going to use the class Trinket, remember, you will be switching targets, but you still need to make sure you're using Crusader Strike on the boss. You need some sort of macro to be able to do that in all likelihood. I did do a video on how to use that. There are other ones you could use as well. Just practice it out, first of all, before you come in, obviously. If you're using Seraphim, just remember, from the first Seraphim, it won't quite line up with the start of Avenging Wrath, but make sure that the second one does. Just delay it a little bit. Also, be mindful, as always with Seraphim, particularly important that you are mindful of exactly when the ring is going to be popped, because the difference between being able to pop Seraphim, Avenging Wrath, and have the ring pop at exactly the same time, and with Heroism as well, and the difference between staggering all those different offensive cooldowns about is massive, absolutely massive. Watch out for bloods getting close. Always keep a weather eye on them. If it looks like one's going to get close, you will have to move out and give it a wallop. There's nothing to be done about that. So I'm just sort of keeping an eye on that one, having to run to it because it was going to get close. But I mean, that's ranged and not attacking that really. But do keep an eye on it as well, because you may be able to save a wipe. This one obviously was not going to get saved at this point. But onwards and upwards. Okay, so on a slightly better one here. Couple of other things to bear in mind when you are, if you choose to use Final Verdict instead of Seraphim, then you would be free to weave in Final Verdict and Divine Storm, of course, when there is even just one other ad in the vicinity. It is a single target fight though, so I would stay in Seal of Truth. There is no benefit in not doing that. When the ad comes up, you will have to get on it. Now here we can see that the ad, because it got blown up by the ring a bit, it's we've taken it a bit further out. I'm moving between the boss and the ad. That is simply so that I can cast Crusader Strike on the boss while still be larger DPS in the ad, and of course sneaky little Crusader Strike on the boss before I go out, before I soak, because I need to make sure I can maintain those stacks. When you're using Seraphim and the class trinket, you've really got to be very, very careful about, with the class trinket, it's all about maintaining those stacks. If you drop them, you are going to lose a lot of damage. Sometimes things out of your control will cause that. Usually, they will be things that shouldn't actually happen. So I wouldn't, if you're having a few pulls on a boss and things keep happening, you keep losing your stacks, and it's something that is, not, it's out of your control. Doesn't necessarily mean that the class trinket is not suitable for that fight. It just means that you've got that things need smoothing out. You're still working on the boss. Other thing with Seraphim, it is really, really important you line up with all your cooldowns. It's absolutely crucial, and very important with the ring. So if you know that the ring is going to be popped to the, you ideally want to know to the second when the ring's going to be popped, and so that you can use Seraphim exactly when it comes off cooldown. Now I'm just going to wait a little bit to see when that happens. Okay, so the ring's off cooldown and it's going to be used there. Seraphim's still got a few seconds to go, but I've popped my Avenging Wrath Seraphim there, just a little bit delayed, can't really help that. Make sure those stacks stay up. You will still get the most benefit, certainly when the highest ticks of the Avenging Wrath, the 4 set, are going off. I have got Seraphim up, and you've got the ring up, and you've got Heroism up, and you've got your DPS potion up, which is the main thing. Oh dear. That shouldn't have happened. But there you go. Another messy kill. It's been a funny old week this week. Oh, I don't know. Okay, so here it is. Gorefiend, the first guild breaker, the first boss you come to that causes so many problems that guilds sometimes just go, can't be bothered. In terms of maximising DPS, obviously this is not a guide for this. If you get pulled in straight away when you've got your Avenging Wrath up and someone's blowing the ring and everything like that, that's just bad luck. There's so many things here that can muck about with your DPS. Forget about it. If you're constantly getting shoved into his belly, obviously your DPS is going to be much lower. If it happens when you're using cooldowns, especially at the start of the fight, or that's just, just make the best of it. Now, in terms of in the stomach, how to maximise your damage here, what you want to do is obviously be moving very quickly from mob to mod. I would definitely recommend Long Arm of the Law. First time you get sucked in, there isn't really a great deal to do, but it's good for moving between the different ads. Now, again, about effective use of cooldowns here, effective use of damage, I should say. Sorry. You need to make sure that ads are prioritized whenever you are not during Feast of Souls, and the way to do that is making sure that you keep an eye behind you. So keep moving your camera behind. You can still be attacking the boss, but just move your camera around, or zoom out like I am, so you can see what's around you. If there is an essence in particular very close to you, you do want to move on to it. The spirits, of course, are the ones we're mainly on. So when they come out, that's Melee's job to get onto that. Make sure you're ready with an interrupt as well when that is needed. When it's constructs, obviously just judge the distance. Don't go racing around the room unless your raid leader specifically tells you to take out constructs. But if it's close and it's in melee range, then obviously help out there, especially if it's high. Obviously, you want to save Avenging Wraths for the feast. So apart from using it at the start of the fight, use it exclusively in the feast so that you can use it at the start of the feast and then use it as soon as that comes off cooldown. If you get a nice transition into the feast, which this isn't because there's an add up and it's still up and it's still up and it's down. If you get a nice transition, then you can of course get full use out of your Avenging Wraths, because the feast lasts for a minute, 2 Avenging Wraths last for a minute. Now, what's really important here is that you properly utilise the first 10 seconds of Avenging Wrath, because of course that benefits from your 4 set. What's really bad is if you pop Avenging Wrath as soon as feast starts, but there's still an add up, so the ring isn't being popped, then you're wasting all that. You're not getting the benefit of those first 10 seconds, the 4 set, with the ring. Similarly, if when you have to go out to soak to collapse the souls, you're in the first 10 seconds of Avenging Wrath, that's not good either. So you need to make sure that you use it. It's better not to have Avenging Wrath for the full souls, because you do need to be on edge. You mustn't be one of those dirty buggers who just focuses completely on the boss. See, I'm getting sucked in again. Isn't it annoying? Well, actually, this is a good, better one to show you, because some ads will maybe appear. Oh, it's not ideal. It's still at the start of one. But yeah, I mean, Long Arm of the Law, I would definitely suggest you can judge and move between them. Remember, you don't have to kill them all. It's just about making sure that none go through with full health. This is your priority target on the inside as well as the outside of the spirit, really. But that one, I don't want that one going in full. Just watch out. Don't be in front of it and get cleaved. Other than that, it's basically rinse and repeat from a damage point of view. So the only other decisions to be made, really, are what talents, what trinkets, and what glyphs you're going to use. So for glyphs, you could use Double Jeopardy, because if you're going to be judging between different mobs quite a lot, you might get a DPS increase for that. That's probably the best one from DPS. But you certainly shouldn't use Mass Exorcism. You should not use anything that cleaves uncontrollably. So you don't be in Seal of Righteousness at all. You don't use Discordant Chorus. And you don't use Mass Exorcism. Because and you have to be a little bit careful about using your Empowered Divine Stormers, because if there is someone, there's a soul that's quite low on health, and it mustn't be broken out just yet, and you use that and break them out, then you're cocking it up for everyone. So just be a little bit mindful. It's not, if you're using Final Verdict, you won't even be able to move out the range of it, because that'll give it a much bigger range. If you're using Seraphim, the main challenge is making sure that you use Seraphim on cooldown, because then the danger is, if you don't and it's delayed, that when you're using Avenging Wrath during Feast of Souls, that your Seraphim isn't ready. It's actually better to miss out a Seraphim altogether outside of Feast of Souls than to do that. For that reason, if you've got a good quality weapon compared to the rest of your gear, you're noticing this one I'm using Seraphim, but in this one I'm using Final Verdict, because my weapon is better than the quality of my gear in general. And it's something, as I've mentioned before, Seraphim is only going to get weaker. I'm not going to say it's going to ever be weak, it's not. But it is going to get weaker when we get our 10 item levels increases with the Valor points. So, and Final Verdict is an easy one to use. If things are not going to go well, Seraphim is not a great talent to use. Similarly with trinkets, class trinket should be ideal, because in Feast of Souls, if you can gather your 3 stacks up for this, absolutely brilliant, and I've tried to use it many times. But if things keep going wrong, if things are just going wrong and you have to muck in to help out, it's really bad using the class trinket. And the reason for that is that although you can use the macro, as on Kilrogg, to make sure that you're always using Crusader Strike on the boss, the problem is that if you're constantly moving away from melee range of the boss, that is not going to help you, and it'll actually lower your overall damage because you're not able, one, you'll lose your stacks, and two, you're not able to use Crusader Strike, because whatever macro you use, you can use macros that will allow you to still hit the adds with Crusader Strike inside the belly where the boss isn't there, if you use the focus one. But if he is there and he's just out of melee range, you will just not be able to use Crusader Strike because that macro will prevent you doing it. So again, maybe Hungering Blow, Unending Hunger, sorry, is better in that particular situation, because although it's unreliable, if it does happen to occur, as it is at the moment, with your Avenging Wrath during Feast, then it will help. It'll probably, I mean, the Feast lasts for a minute. You know, it will pop at some time. It's just, it would be most helpful if it popped when you've got the ring up or something like that. And that's how to maximize effective DPS on it. Now, you might note, if you wanted to absolutely whore it, then of course you will do none of those things. You might even take Light's Hammer, you will be in Seal of the Righteousness all the time, and you will cleave like Billio, and you will also still hope not to get chucked into his belly, because that is just death to a damage thing. But of course, in order to do that, you would not only have the permission of your raid, because you will, if you just did this independently, absolutely wipe your raid every time. And remember, what I'm talking about here is effective damage, and effective damage always has to be on priority adds. The boss is not a priority add. Yes, it is still useful to be able to do damage to him. I'm not saying we don't need to do any damage to him outside of Feast, because, you know, the first time you kill him, you might well end up doing it in 3 Feasts, and that's to be avoided if you can. And kill it in 2 Feasts, all to the better. And with the, you know, the better item levels we'll be getting very soon, that should be very doable even for guilds that are killing it for the first time. But if you don't get on top of the adds, then you're going to wipe. You're not going to get to the end of the fight, in which case you're not going to rank or anything like that. So you have to control those adds really inside the stomach when you get thrown in, and then outside. Spirit's always first, of course. And again, the more people focus them, the tidier transition will get into the feast. If you leave 1 or 2 poor saps on the adds when the feast is going, then it's longer before they can bring their useful damage to bear on the boss. So it doesn't help the raid at all. So everyone needs to burst them down within seconds so that everyone can then focus the boss with all their cooldowns being used with the ring to maximum benefit to blow up the boss. Okay, so that's Gorefiend. It is a difficult one. I mean, one of the key points about all of the 3 most difficult bosses in this instance is the nature of RNG. It can affect anyone unexpectedly, and I think that is one of the aspects that makes these sort of fights much more difficult. But I say on this particular one, Final Verdict gives you a bit of a cushion. Doesn't have to be lined up as precisely as with Seraphim. So if it's a bit, there's not a clear winner with Seraphim, maybe use Final Verdict. Again, Unending Hunger is a bit of an RNG element, but if things are going wrong with the fight, Class Trinket is not so good. Okay, so I hope that was useful. If there are anything you'd still like to know, put comments on the box as usual, or email me. As I do this, as I finish this video off, on MMO Champion there are details of spell changes to many classes, including Retribution Paladins, all buffs. But remember, if everyone gets buffed more than you, a buff is still a nerf, but we'll see, we'll see. So I'll be doing a video on that at the weekend. Hopefully there's a bit more known, and if it goes live on the PTR, and I might go on the PTR this weekend and have a look at them. But of course, remember also this weekend we've got BlizzCon, so we'll see. But anyway, in the next part of this one, I'll be covering the next 3 bosses. Now, of course, that could be anything, but I will treat the next 3 bosses as being Socrathar, Iskar, and Fell Lord.